The night that should have ended the war only deepened it. The fire at the Azure table burned away the last illusion of control. 3 nights after you survive someone trying to kill you, you learn the worst truth of all. They were never aiming for you in the first place. The city looked different at 3 a.m. from the 42nd floor. Quieter. Honest. Like Los Angeles had finally stopped performing for an audience that never cared. Daniel Kang stood at the window of his penthouse, watching his reflection overlap with the cityscape, a ghost wearing an expensive suit, haunting a life he'd built from other people's nightmares. 3 nights since the Azure Table massacre. 3 nights since Riley Clayton had shattered his carefully constructed world and made him grateful for the destruction. The surveillance footage played on mute behind him. He'd watched it so many times he could hear the gunshots in his memory, the percussion of violence that had felt almost like music when he fought beside her. Synchronized, instinctive, 2 people who'd never trained together moving like they'd been doing it for years. You keep watching that, Riley's voice came soft from across the room, like you're trying to figure out if it was real. She looked the same, but the space between them carried the memory of a night they both tried not to name, a night of smoke, blood, and touch that still lived beneath their skin. You killed 12 men in 40 seconds, Daniel said, setting the tablet between them on the marble coffee table. Riley didn't look at the screen. Her voice came quiet, matter of fact. 13. You missed the one in the kitchen. Daniel turned. She sat curled in his leather armchair, looking smaller than she had during the fight, more vulnerable. Her hands wrapped around a mug of tea he'd made her. Earl Grey, 2 sugars, the way she'd ordered it twice a week for 6 months when she thought he wasn't paying attention. He had been. God help him. He'd been noticing everything about her since the first night she walked into his restaurant and looked at him like she could see straight through the empire to the frightened boy from Busan underneath. I'm trying to figure out, Daniel said carefully, how I missed what you were for half a year. That was the point. Riley set down her mug, met his gaze with those impossibly steady eyes. I'm very good at disappearing, at becoming exactly what people expect to see. Invisible, forgettable, safe. You're none of those things. No. A ghost of a smile. But I needed you to think I was. The words should have felt like betrayal, should have tasted like poison. Instead, Daniel felt something that might have been relief, that someone had finally looked at his life close enough to see the cracks, the rot, the places where violence had eaten through civilization's veneer. Tell me, he said, moving to sit across from her. Not crowding, not threatening, just present. Tell me who you really are, Riley Clayton. Because that name tastes like a lie, and I'm tired of living in a world built on pretty fiction. She was quiet for a long moment, studying him with an intensity that felt like being seen for the first time. Really seen. Not the tiger of Busan, not the billionaire criminal, not the monster playing at redemption, just him. My real name doesn't matter, she said finally. It died with the woman I used to be, in places so dark that governments pretend they don't exist. They called our program Shadow 7. We were the people they sent to solve problems that couldn't be solved with diplomacy or law. Assassins. Ghosts. Riley's voice carried the weight of old graves. We weren't supposed to exist. Weren't supposed to have families or futures or anything resembling a conscience. Just targets and termination orders and the kind of training that turns human beings into precision instruments. Daniel absorbed this, filing away the pain threaded through her words. How many? 53 confirmed kills before I turned 25. 12 countries, 7 languages, 0 hesitation. She looked at her hands like they belonged to someone else. Until Jakarta, until I watched a little girl die because I followed orders instead of instinct, and something inside me broke. Or maybe healed. I'm still not sure which. So you disappeared. Buried myself so deep even my handlers couldn't find me. Riley's laugh was bitter, beautiful. Became a waitress in Los Angeles, serving wine to people who'd never suspect that the woman refilling their glass had ended lives with those same hands. And then you ended up in my restaurant, Daniel said quietly. 6 months ago. Not by accident. No. She met his eyes and he saw the apology there, the regret. They found me, my old agency. Said they'd let me stay dead if I did one last job. Monitor Daniel Kang, report on his operations, observe and extract intelligence without engagement. But you engaged. Daniel leaned forward. 3 nights ago, when those men came for me, you could have let them finish it. Could have stayed invisible, protected your cover, walked away clean. I know. So why didn't you? Riley was quiet for so long that Daniel thought she might not answer. Then, because I've spent 10 years learning to see people as targets, as objectives, as problems to be solved with violence. And somewhere in those 6 months, watching you, I remembered what it felt like to see someone as human, flawed and dangerous, and trying so damn hard to be better than the blood that made you. The confession hung between them like a bridge across impossible distance. Daniel's phone shattered the moment. A harsh buzz against marble. He glanced at the screen, and his entire body went rigid. Riley saw the change. What? Wordlessly, he turned the phone toward her. Encrypted video file. No sender information. Just a thumbnail that made Daniel's blood turn to ice water. His sister G1, bound to a chair, crying, terrified. And behind her, wearing a smile that looked like a wound, stood Daniel's uncle Minho. Riley's training kicked in immediately. She was up, moving, analyzing. When was this sent? 30 seconds ago. Daniel's voice sounded distant, unfamiliar, like he was listening to someone else speak through his mouth. Play it. The video was 60 seconds of carefully choreographed cruelty. Minho explaining in detail how he'd spent 3 years dismantling Daniel's empire from within. How Los Reyes wasn't an outside threat but a weapon he'd aimed at his own nephew. How G1, sweet innocent G1 who just wanted to study art and live a normal life, was actually his biological daughter, and he wanted her back. 6 hours, nephew. Pier 17. Midnight. Bring me control of the family holdings, or I'll put a bullet in her head and make sure you watch. The screen went black. Daniel sat frozen, the phone trembling in his hand. Riley watched his face cycle through emotions: shock, rage, grief, calculation. Watched the businessman and the criminal and the brother all trying to coexist in one body that suddenly felt too small for all that pain. He's lying, Daniel said, but his voice cracked on the words. G1 can't be. My father wouldn't. Your father was human, Riley said gently. Humans make mistakes, have affairs, complicate bloodlines. She knelt in front of him, placed her hands over his. But that doesn't change what she means to you. Doesn't change that she's in danger. I can't. Daniel looked at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked lost. Riley, I can't lose her. She's the only family I have left. The only person who looks at me and doesn't see a monster. Then we don't lose her. Riley's voice carried absolute certainty. We go get her back. We? Daniel's eyes searched hers. You don't owe me anything, you've already risked. I'm not doing this because I owe you. Riley squeezed his hands, anchoring him. I'm doing this because somewhere in the last 6 months, you stopped being a mission and started being something else. Someone I don't want to watch lose everything. The words tasted like confession, like promise, like the first honest thing she'd said since Jakarta. Daniel pulled her closer. Not romantically, but desperately. Like a drowning man grabbing the only piece of driftwood in an endless ocean. Riley let him, wrapped her arms around him and felt him shake with the effort of holding himself together. We're going to save her, she whispered against his hair. But first, I need to tell you exactly who's been hunting you, and why this is about more than just family betrayal. Daniel pulled back, studied her face. What aren't you telling me? That I wasn't the only shadow operative in Los Angeles. Riley's expression hardened. There's another one, and he's been helping your uncle from the beginning. But to understand how family loyalty became the deadliest weapon of all, you need to know that Minho Kang had been preparing for this moment since before Daniel was born, planning a revenge built on blood and betrayal, and the kind of patience that only comes from watching someone steal everything you believe should be yours. Welcome back, my beautiful souls and kindred spirits. Before we start, go ahead and subscribe, like, and share where you're watching from. It always warms my heart to see our little storytelling family stretch across the world. Every click, every comment, every bit of love you give helps us keep uncovering these unforgettable stories together. Now breathe deep, and let's dive into the conspiracy that's been decades in the making. The safe house existed 3 stories beneath downtown Los Angeles, buried so deep that sunlight became mythology. Daniel led Riley through biometric locks and reinforced steel doors into a space that whispered of luxury and screamed of paranoia. Marble floors reflected recessed lighting. Abstract art worth small fortunes hung on walls thick enough to survive explosions. Every surface gleamed with the particular shine of things that cost more than most people earned in lifetimes. But Riley saw what Daniel had designed it to be, a tomb dressed as a palace. She moved through the space with professional assessment, fingers trailing along doorframes, eyes mapping sightlines and vulnerabilities. Daniel watched her work, leaning against the granite kitchen island with arms crossed, trying to ignore how the simple black shirt she wore moved with her body, how her hair caught the ambient light when she turned her head. "Your uncle designed this place," Riley said, not a question. She was reading the architecture like scripture. The backup generators, the air filtration system, the redundant communication arrays. This wasn't built by security consultants. This was built by someone who understands how families kill each other. Daniel's jaw tightened. Minho oversaw construction 5 years ago, said every king needs a castle that can survive revolution. He was planning your funeral even then. Riley pulled out a compact tablet, began running diagnostic sweeps for surveillance equipment. The question is whether he's watching us right now. The thought made Daniel's skin crawl. He pushed off the island, closed the distance between them in 3 strides. Riley stiffened slightly as he entered her space, but didn't retreat. He reached past her shoulder, close enough to smell whatever generic soap she used, close enough to feel the heat radiating from her skin, and tapped a sequence into the wall panel. "Full electromagnetic shielding," he said, voice rougher than intended. "Nothing gets in or out without my authorization. If Minho installed surveillance, it went dark the moment we entered." Riley turned, and suddenly they were inches apart. Her eyes flicked to his mouth, then away, so fast he might have imagined it. Might have. "You're sure?" "I've survived 20 years in this world by being sure." Daniel didn't step back. Neither did she. "The attack at the restaurant wasn't the first time someone tried to kill me. Won't be the last. But down here were ghosts. Invisible even to ghosts." Something shifted in Riley's expression. The operative receded, leaving behind the woman who'd sat in his penthouse 3 hours ago confessing sins. "Then we need to figure out how they accessed your networks. Los Reyes didn't just get lucky with timing and location. Someone fed them everything. Your schedule, your security protocols, the blind spots in your coverage." Daniel moved to the command center, dominating one wall, a curved desk supporting 6 monitors that flickered to life at his touch. Financial records, encrypted communications, security footage from a dozen properties. "I've been running analysis since the attack. Every transaction, every access point, every person with clearance to operational intelligence." Riley joined him, her shoulder brushing his as she leaned forward to study the screens. The contact was brief, accidental, electric. Daniel's breath caught, and he knew she felt it too by the way her pupils dilated, the way her pulse jumped visibly in her throat. "Show me your inner circle," she said, voice carefully neutral. "People who could move freely through your organization without triggering suspicion." Daniel pulled up personnel files. 8 faces appeared on the center screen, each with detailed histories, clearance levels, family connections. His fingers hesitated over one photo before moving on. Riley caught it. "Who's that?" "Marcus Lee. Runs my Koreatown operations. Been with me 8 years." Daniel's voice carried weight. 3 days ago, I had him brought in for questioning. Thought he might be the leak. And? He died during interrogation. Daniel's hands fisted on the desk. "Heart attack," they said. "But I saw his face before. He was loyal until the end. Kept saying I was wrong about him, that someone was framing him." He closed his eyes. "I killed an innocent man because I was paranoid." Riley's hand covered his, warm and steady. "You were surviving. Don't mistake caution for cruelty." "Is there a difference?" Daniel turned his hand over, lacing their fingers together without thinking. Her palm was calloused, warrior rough against his own scarred skin. "I've built everything on violence. Told myself it was necessary, that I was protecting what mattered. But maybe Minho's right. Maybe I'm just a monster pretending civilization." "No." Riley squeezed his hand, grounding him. "Monsters don't feel guilty. They don't question. You're a man who's done terrible things trying to figure out if redemption is possible. There's a difference. Daniel looked at their joined hands, struck by how natural it felt. How right. This woman who'd killed 13 men to save his life, who moved through darkness like she was born there, who understood violence as a language they both spoke fluently. The files, Riley said gently, drawing him back. Let me see the access logs. Daniel pulled up data streams with his free hand, unwilling to break contact. Together they traced digital footprints, following breadcrumbs through encrypted systems and shadow accounts. Riley's breathing changed as patterns emerged, her grip on his hand tightening. There, she breathed, pointing. That signature. It's shadow protocol encoding. Someone from my old program has been in your systems for months. Daniel's blood ran cold. You said you were the only operative in Los Angeles. I thought I was. Riley's face had gone pale. But this encryption method, there's only one other person who uses this specific variant. She looked at him, eyes dark with old fear. His code name was Wraith. We trained together before Jakarta. He was better than me at infiltration, at becoming anyone, anywhere, if he's been embedded in your organization. Then every conversation, every plan, every moment of vulnerability has been recorded and weaponized. Daniel felt the walls closing in. How long? Riley scrolled through timestamps. First access point dates to 3 years ago, right around the time Minho would have started planning this. 3 years. The number felt like a sentence. My uncle spent 3 years positioning pieces, building alliances, waiting for the perfect moment to destroy everything I've built. Not just destroy. Riley pulled up encrypted communications between shadow accounts. Look at the pattern. He wasn't trying to kill you at the restaurant. He was trying to expose me. Every move since has been designed to force both of us into the open, make us vulnerable, isolate us from allies. Daniel studied the data with growing horror. She was right. The attack hadn't been assassination. It had been revelation. A surgical strike designed to strip away Riley's cover and shatter Daniel's sense of security simultaneously. He wants us broken before he kills us, Daniel said quietly. Wants us to understand we never had control, that everything we thought we built was just stage dressing for his revenge. Yes. Riley's voice carried the exhaustion of someone recognizing a trap long after walking into it. And G1 is the final piece. Taking her forces you to choose between empire and family, between legacy and love. Daniel's phone buzzed. Both of them froze. The message was audio only. Minho's voice, warm and paternal, made Daniel's skin crawl. I know you're in the safe house, nephew, the one I built for you. Did you really think I'd create a sanctuary without keeping keys? You have 5 hours now. Tick-tock. The call disconnected. Daniel's stomach turned. Of course Minho could find them. He'd overseen construction. The biometric core, the encrypted locks, every layer of shielding carried his fingerprints. He hadn't breached their security tonight. He'd simply turned the system back on. Riley was already moving, repacking equipment with military efficiency. We need to leave. Now. If he knows we're here, then everywhere is compromised. Daniel caught her wrist, stopped her frantic motion. Riley, look at me. She did, and he saw the assassin warring with the woman. Saw her calculating exit strategies and survival probabilities. Saw her preparing to disappear into whatever shadow could hide her next. Don't run, Daniel said. Please. I know every instinct you have is screaming to vanish, to protect yourself. But if we separate now, he wins. He isolates us and picks us off one by one. Daniel, I'm a liability. My presence puts G1 in more danger. Your presence is the only thing keeping me from becoming exactly what Minho wants. Daniel pulled her closer, both hands on her arms now, anchoring her. A monster who burns everything down without thinking. You make me remember there's more than violence. That maybe broken people can save each other instead of destroying everything they touch. Riley's breath hitched. They were close enough that he could see gold flecks in her brown eyes, could feel the rapid thud of her pulse where his thumb pressed against her wrist. I see monsters, Daniel whispered, echoing words from hours ago. But when I look at you, I see the woman who saved my life, who chose humanity over orders, who's terrified of being seen and brave enough to stay visible anyway. You don't know what you're asking, Riley's voice cracked. The things I've done. I know exactly what I'm asking. Daniel's hands slid from her arms to her face, cradling her jaw with a gentleness that contradicted every violent thing he'd ever done. I'm asking you to trust that maybe we're not beyond saving. That maybe two weapons can learn to be people if they're willing to try together. The moment stretched between them, taut and trembling. Riley's hands came up to grip his wrists, not pulling away but holding on like she was drowning, and he was the only solid thing in an ocean of chaos. Then her tablet chimed. Both of them jerked apart, the spell broken. Riley checked the screen and her face went absolutely still. Surveillance intercept from the Port District. There's chatter about a meeting tonight between Minho and Paulo Reyes. Reyes is alive, Daniel had suspected, but confirmation felt like a punch. The bastard survived. Not just survived. According to this, he's been recovering at one of Minho's properties for 3 weeks. Your uncle has been protecting him, rebuilding his forces, preparing for something big. Riley's fingers flew across the screen. They're planning something for tomorrow night. A coordinated strike against your remaining holdings. Daniel's mind raced through implications. While I'm supposed to be delivering ransom for G1, they want me distracted, vulnerable, watching my empire burn while my sister dies. Unless we flip the script, Riley looked up and the warrior was back in full force. We know where they'll be tonight. We know they think we're scrambling, desperate. What if we hit them first? You're suggesting we go on offense while they have G1? I'm suggesting we make them believe we're playing their game while actually dismantling their entire operation. Riley pulled up building schematics. Minho's estate is where he's keeping her. I can infiltrate tonight while you confront him and Reyes. Create chaos, extract G1, disappear before they realize what happened. Daniel studied the plans, seeing the strategy. Dangerous, borderline suicidal. Exactly the kind of move desperate people made when they had nothing left to lose. You'd be going in alone, he said. I work better alone. Riley. Daniel, this is what I'm good at. Infiltration, extraction, moving through hostile territory like smoke. Her eyes met his with absolute certainty. Trust me to do what I was trained for. And I'll trust you to keep their attention long enough that they never see me coming. The plan crystallized between them, dangerous and perfect. Daniel nodded slowly. Then we move tonight. But Riley, if anything goes wrong, it won't. If it does, Daniel continued, voice firm, you get G1 out. Don't come back for me. Don't try to save everyone. Just get her somewhere safe and disappear like you're so good at doing. Riley's jaw tightened. That's not. Promise me. Daniel stepped close again, forehead nearly touching hers. Promise me you'll save her even if it means leaving me behind. The words hung between them, heavy with everything they hadn't said. Everything they might never get the chance to say. I promise, Riley whispered finally. But you better survive this, Daniel Kang. Because I'm tired of being alone, and you're the first person in 10 years who's made me want to stay. The estate sat in the Hollywood Hills like a golden crown on a serpent's head. Daniel drove up the winding private road in his Aston Martin, dressed in a tailored suit that cost more than most cars, playing the part of the prodigal nephew seeking reconciliation. Every inch of him screamed wealth and power, the tiger of Busan returning to family territory. But his heart hammered against his ribs, knowing Riley was somewhere in the darkness behind him, invisible and lethal. The gates opened without him calling ahead. Expected. Minho wanted this meeting as much as Daniel did, though for vastly different reasons. Security escorted him through manicured gardens where every flower probably cost more to maintain than it did to purchase. Koi ponds reflected strategic lighting. Stone pathways wound between carefully cultivated chaos that probably took a dozen gardeners to maintain. Everything beautiful. Everything calculated. Everything poisonous underneath. Minho waited in the main hall, standing beneath a crystal chandelier that cast fractured light across marble floors. He looked exactly as Daniel remembered. Silver hair perfectly styled, tailored suit that whispered Italian craftsmanship, smile warm enough to fool anyone who didn't know the temperature of his soul. Nephew. Minho opened his arms. You came. Daniel allowed the embrace, felt his uncle's hands pat his back like benediction, and resisted the urge to flinch. This close, he could smell expensive cologne masking something underneath. Rot, maybe. The particular scent of ambition left too long in darkness. You have my sister, Daniel said, stepping back. Of course I came. Your sister. Minho's smile didn't waver. Is that what G1 is to you? Just a sister? What else would she be? Daniel froze. Reyes was supposed to be dead, bled out in the chaos at the Azure table, or so everyone believed. But ghosts have a way of crawling out of graves when vengeance calls. The truth. A new voice cut through the hall like a blade. Paulo Reyes emerged from an adjoining room, moving with a pronounced limp, one hand pressed against ribs that probably still ached from bullet wounds. His face carried new scars, souvenirs from the restaurant massacre. She's Minho's daughter. Has been since before you were old enough to spell your own name. The confirmation hit differently than Riley's warning. Hearing it from Reyes, seeing Minho's face confirm everything with silent satisfaction, made the betrayal real in ways Data never could. My father. Your father stole everything from me. Minho's warmth evaporated like morning dew under Sunday. What remained was cold, ancient rage. My sister, my birthright, the family legacy that should have been mine. He was the second son, Daniel. I was firstborn. The business should have been mine. But your grandfather loved your father more, and tradition be damned. Daniel's mind reeled, reconstructing history through this new lens. So you seduced my father's wife, got her pregnant, created your own blood claim to the legacy. I loved her. Minho's voice cracked slightly. Your father's second wife, Ji-won's mother. Emotion, Daniel, is the ultimate weapon. Even love can be sharpened to draw blood. I loved her first, before your father took her too. And when she came to me broken by his infidelity with your mother, I showed her what real devotion looked like. You made her a weapon in your revenge, Daniel countered. Used her love to create leverage. I created family. Minho moved closer, circling Daniel like a predator assessing prey. Something your father never understood. He built empires on fear and violence, alienated everyone who mattered, died alone in that hospital bed with only you holding his hand. Tell me, nephew, did he whisper your mother's name at the end? Or did he call for the son who actually mattered? The words were designed to cut, and they did. Daniel's father's final hours had been delirious, confused, calling for people long dead. But among the morphine-soaked confusion, he'd never once called for Minho. Where is G1? Daniel forced his voice steady. Safe, for now. Reyes limped forward, pulled out his phone, showed footage of G1 in a sparse room, curled on a bed, alive but terrified. Comfortable enough. Better treatment than I received in your restaurant. You came to kill me, Daniel said flatly. Forgive me for not providing better hospitality during my attempted murder. Reyes's laugh was bitter. Your waitress did that. Where is she now? Riley Clayton, though I suspect that's not her real name. Shadow 7, according to my sources. A ghost made flesh, and you had her serving wine in your restaurant for 6 months without knowing. Daniel kept his expression neutral, giving nothing away. Somewhere in the darkness, Riley was moving. Every second he kept them talking was a second she gained ground. I didn't come to discuss the help, Daniel said. I came to negotiate. You want control of the family holdings. Fine. Let's discuss terms. Minho's eyes gleamed. So easy? No fight? No speech about honor and legacy? Legacy is just a pretty word for the corpses we leave behind. Daniel gestured around the opulent hall. You want this empire? It's yours. All I want is G1 safe. Liar. Minho stepped close, studied Daniel's face with the intimate knowledge of someone who'd watched him grow from boy to man. You're stalling, planning something. That's what I taught you after all. Never negotiate from weakness. Never surrender until you've positioned your counterstrike. Then you taught me well. Daniel held his uncle's gaze. But you're wrong about one thing. I'm not negotiating from weakness. I'm negotiating from exhaustion. From the realization that everything I've built is stained in blood, I can't wash away. That maybe the best thing I can do for everyone is walk away. Something flickered in Minho's expression. Surprise, maybe. Or disappointment. You're serious. Minho's voice carried the tone of someone reassessing calculations. You'd actually surrender everything your father built, everything you've bled for. For G1? Yes, without hesitation. Daniel's voice rang with truth because it was true. Whatever else he'd become, whatever sins marked his soul, He'd never let his sister pay for his mistakes. She's innocent. She deserves a life that doesn't involve people like us. Reyes snorted. Noble. Pathetic, but noble. It's honest. Daniel turned to face the cartel boss. Something you'd know nothing about. You came for revenge, dressed it up as business, got yourself nearly killed in the process. And now you're standing in another man's house, letting him pull your strings, because you're too blinded by rage to see you're being used. Careful, Reyes warned. Why? You planning to kill me? Go ahead. Daniel spread his arms. But understand that the moment I die, every piece of insurance I've prepared goes active. Evidence to federal authorities about Los Reyes operations. Financial records linking Minho to international trafficking. Enough documentation to burn both your organizations to ash. My death trigger is an empty threat. It's mutually assured destruction. The lie came smooth as silk, backed by years of practice. Daniel had no such dead man's switch prepared, but they didn't know that. Couldn't risk knowing that. Minho's jaw tightened. You're bluffing. Test it. The standoff stretched between them, 3 men playing games with lives as currency. Outside, night deepened. Somewhere in that darkness, Riley moved through shadow toward a girl who didn't know she was the catalyst for everything. Daniel's phone buzzed. Text message, 1 word. Clear. Riley had reached Jiwon's location. I want proof of life, Daniel said, keeping his voice level. Video call with G1. Let me confirm she's unharmed, and we'll proceed with transfer of assets. Minho studied him for a long moment, then nodded to Reyes. The cartel boss made a call, and minutes later, a tablet appeared showing live feed of Jiwon's room. She sat on the bed, looking small and terrified. Dark hair tangled around a face stained with tears. When she saw Daniel on screen, her face crumpled. Daniel, she whispered in Korean. I'm scared. They said you were coming. That you'd give them everything to save me. I will, Daniel promised, heartbreaking. You're going to be fine. Just hold on a little longer. What he didn't say, Riley was already there, positioned outside that room, waiting for the perfect moment to extract. What he prayed Jiwon understood from his tone. Trust me. Trust that I haven't abandoned you. The call ended. Minho smiled. Satisfied? For now. Daniel pulled out his phone. I'll need to make arrangements. Transfer this volume of assets will take time. Bank authorizations, legal documentation, proper channels to avoid triggering regulatory oversight. You have until midnight, Minho said. 22 hours. After that, G1 becomes my insurance policy permanently. I raise her as my daughter, teach her the business. Give her the legacy you're throwing away. Over my dead body. That can be arranged. Minho's warmth returned, poisonous and familiar. But I'd prefer not to. Despite everything, you're still family, Daniel. Still the boy I taught to read financial reports and manage operations. I'd rather see you walk away than carry your corpse. The sentiment would have meant more if Minho hadn't spent 3 years orchestrating Daniel's destruction. I'll be in touch, Daniel said, turning toward the door. One more thing. Minho's voice stopped him. Your waitress, Riley Clayton. Tell her that Wraith sends his regards. Tell her he's been watching, that he never forgot Jakarta, and that when this is over, there are old debts to settle. Ice flooded Daniel's veins. The message confirmed everything Riley feared. Her former partner was here, embedded, hunting her. I don't know what you're talking about, Daniel said. Of course not. Minho's smile was sharp enough to draw blood. Give her the message anyway, just in case. Daniel left the estate feeling eyes track him from every shadow, knowing Riley was somewhere behind him moving toward extraction, praying they'd both survive the night. His phone buzzed. Riley. Package secured. 30 seconds to exfil. Meet at checkpoint Beta. Relief flooded through him so fierce it felt like drowning. But as he climbed into his car, Daniel noticed something on the windshield. A playing card, the Ace of Spades, traditional death marker, and written across it in red ink that looked too much like blood. The tiger hunts, but so does the Wraith. See you soon, old friend, W. The message wasn't for Daniel, it was for Riley. A declaration of war from a ghost she'd hoped stayed buried. He drove into the night, toward checkpoint Beta, toward Riley and G1, knowing the real battle was just beginning. The video came at 3 a.m., designed to catch them in that vulnerable space between sleep and waking where defenses crumbled. Daniel's phone screamed emergency alert. He jolted upright from the couch where he'd been pretending to rest, laptop still open on his chest, mind spinning through 1,000 scenarios and contingencies. Beside him, Riley stirred from her position in the armchair, weapon appearing in her hand faster than conscious thought. The screen showed Jiwon's face. Except something was wrong. Her eyes held a terror that hadn't been there during the earlier call. Her lip was split, fresh blood painting her chin. Behind her, Minho stood with theatrical patience, one hand resting on her shoulder like a father posing for family portraits. Paulo Reyes leaned against the wall, arms crossed, satisfaction evident in every line of his body. "Good morning, nephew," Minho said, voice warm despite the brutality of the staging. "I trust you've been making arrangements?" Daniel's hands clenched around the phone. "You heard her." A minor lesson in punctuality. Minho's fingers tightened on Jiwon's shoulder, making her wince. "She tried to escape 3 hours ago. Injured 2 of my men in the process. I'm actually impressed. She has more of my fire than I expected. But escape attempts carry consequences." Riley moved beside Daniel, close enough that their shoulders touched. He felt her stillness, the predator assessing prey, calculating range and vulnerability. Her finger tapped twice against his arm. Sign language they'd developed over the past 12 hours. "Hold. Wait. The deadline hasn't passed," Daniel forced out. "You said midnight. I have 19 hours. Deadlines are fluid when respect isn't shown." Minho leaned down, spoke directly into Jiwon's ear loud enough for the microphone to catch. "Your brother thought he could play games with me. Thought he could send his assassin to steal you away while he distracted me with false negotiations. Did you really think I wouldn't have surveillance on every approach vector, Daniel? That I wouldn't be watching for exactly that kind of tactical maneuver?" The bottom dropped out of Daniel's world. "What are you talking about?" "Your waitress. Your weapon. Your Riley." Minho pulled out his own phone, showed security footage of the estate from hours earlier. Thermal imaging caught a figure moving through shadows with professional precision, bypassing guards, navigating toward the wing where Jiwon had been held. Had been. Past tense. Because the footage showed the room empty by the time Riley reached it, showed her frozen assessment of being outplayed, showed her retreat into darkness before reinforcements arrived. "She was never there," Daniel breathed. "The video call was pre-recorded. You baited us into revealing our strategy. I baited you into revealing her." Minho's smile was arctic. "Shadow 7, alive and operational in Los Angeles. My friend Wraith will be so pleased to confirm his suspicions. He's been hunting her for a decade, you know. Unfinished business from Jakarta. A child who died because 7 chose conscience over orders." Riley's face had gone absolutely blank beside him. The kind of empty that came before volcanic eruption. Daniel could feel violence coiling in her muscles, could sense her calculating whether she could reach through the phone screen and strangle Minho with pure will. "What do you want?" Daniel asked. "New terms." Minho straightened. "All business now. You bring Riley Clayton to me. Tonight, Pier 17, where we first planned Jiwon's exchange. You deliver Shadow 7 alive and functional, and I'll consider returning your sister unharmed." "No." Daniel's voice came flat, absolute. "That's not negotiable." "Then Jiwon dies." Minho's gun appeared, pressed against her temple. Jiwon whimpered, tears streaming. "Simple economics, nephew. One life for another. The assassin who's killed dozens for money and government, or the innocent girl who just wants to paint watercolors and live quietly. You have 8 hours to decide which one matters more." The screen went black. Silence crashed into the room like physical force. Daniel sat frozen, phone still gripped in white-knuckled hands, mind fracturing into 1,000 pieces that wouldn't fit back together. Choose. He wanted Daniel to choose. Family or what? Not quite love, not yet, but something that felt dangerously close. Something that made breathing easier when Riley was near, that made the future seem possible instead of just inevitable violence. "You can't give me to them," Riley said quietly. "You know that, right? The moment I'm in Minho's custody, both G1 and you become expendable. He'll kill you all and disappear with whatever assets he can liquidate." "I know." Daniel set down the phone with careful precision, like it might detonate. I also know I can't let him kill my sister. So we're at an impasse. No. Daniel stood, began pacing. The safe house suddenly felt too small, walls closing in with claustrophobic pressure. We're at the moment where we stop reacting to his moves and start making our own. Riley watched him with those assessing eyes, reading body language like text. What are you thinking? That Minho wants you because Wraith wants you. That this entire operation has been designed not just to destroy me, but to deliver you to someone with an old grudge. Daniel stopped pacing, turned to face her fully. What happened in Jakarta? What did you do that made this Wraith person hunt you for a decade? Riley's expression shuddered. For a moment, the assassin cracked, revealing raw wounds underneath. There was a mission. High-value target in a residential district. My orders were clean elimination, no collateral damage. But the intelligence was wrong. The target had a daughter, maybe 8 years old. She wasn't supposed to be there. But she was. She was. Riley's voice went hollow. And when my partner, Wraith, got compromised, when the extraction went sideways and local security converged, he ordered me to eliminate all witnesses, including the girl. You refused. I tried to save her. Riley's hands fisted in her lap. Tried to get her out, get both of us out. But Wraith interpreted my hesitation as betrayal. He completed the mission his way, killed everyone in that house, including the child, and blamed the massacre on me in his after-action report. Said I'd gone rogue, become a liability. That's why you disappeared. That's why the agency tried to retire me, permanently. Riley met his gaze. I've been running from both sides ever since. From the government that wanted me dead for knowing too much, and from Wraith who wanted me dead for ruining his perfect record. Daniel absorbed this, pieces clicking into place. Minho isn't just offering you to settle an old debt. He's offering you to someone who wants you destroyed, which means when we show up at that pier, it's a kill box. Riley finished. Minho, Wraith, Reyes, probably 24 shooters positioned for clean elimination. They'll take you out first, then me, stage it as lover's suicide or cartel violence. G1 becomes Minho's ward, and everything you've built transfers to him legally since she's technically his daughter. Elegant, Daniel admitted. Brutal, but elegant. We could run. Riley's voice carried no conviction. Take what resources you can access, disappear into whatever shadows will hide us. Let Minho have the empire. Start over somewhere he can't reach. And leave G1 to him? Let her grow up being molded into a weapon by a man who sees family as property? Daniel shook his head. No, I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, Riley. Hurt a lot of people. But I will not abandon her to that fate. Then we're going to that pier, Riley said quietly. Walking into a trap with full knowledge it's a trap. That's suicide, Daniel. Only if we play by their rules. Daniel moved to his command center, fingers flying across keyboards. But what if we bring our own game? What if instead of reacting to Minho's strategy, we force him to react to ours? Riley joined him at the screens, studying maps and schematics as he pulled them up. Pier 17 sprawled across her monitors. Converted warehouse district on the waterfront. Dozens of containers providing cover, limited approach vectors, perfect for ambush. He'll have every angle covered, she said. Unless we don't come from an angle. Daniel zoomed in on water access. Pier 17 extends over the harbor. Deep water, strong currents, but navigable for someone with the right equipment and training. You're suggesting underwater insertion. Riley's tactical mind engaged immediately. Come up through the pier structure itself. Bypass all surface security. Can you do it? I've done harder. Riley studied the approach vectors, calculating probabilities. But that gets us inside their perimeter. Doesn't solve the problem of overwhelming force once we're detected. We don't need to fight everyone. Daniel pulled up different files. Financial records, property deeds, business licenses. We just need leverage. Minho's empire is built on legitimate fronts hiding criminal enterprise. Money laundering through shell corporations, real estate investments masking trafficking routes. If we threaten to expose everything, he kills G1 out of spite before authorities can respond, Riley interrupted. Wounded animals are most dangerous when cornered. True. Daniel sat back, frustration mounting. Every strategy led to the same conclusion. Someone died. Probably multiple someones. Possibly all of them. What would you do? If this was a shadow mission, how would you approach extraction? Riley was quiet for a long moment. That particular stillness of someone watching violent memories replay. I'd make them believe they'd already won. Stage a surrender so complete they'd stop looking for the trap. Surrender. Daniel tested the word. We show up at Pier 17. I deliver you in custody. Make Minho think he's succeeded. And while they're focused on their victory, I break free and extract G1. Riley nodded slowly. It could work. Requires split-second timing and a lot of luck. But it's viable. No. Daniel's voice went hard. I'm not using you as bait. Daniel, I'm trained for this. Escaping custody, surviving hostile environments, completing objectives under extreme duress. This is literally what Shadow 7 was designed to do. I don't care what you were designed for. Daniel gripped her shoulders, forced her to meet his eyes. You're not a tool anymore. Not a weapon to be deployed and discarded. You're a person. Someone who deserves better than being sacrificed for my mistakes. Riley's breath caught. Her hands came up to rest on his chest, fingers curling in his shirt. Your uncle is going to kill her if we don't do something. G1 dies, and you'll never forgive yourself. I've seen that kind of guilt destroy people from the inside. Then I'll live with it. Daniel's forehead dropped to hers, exhaustion and desperation bleeding through. But I won't live with your death. Can't. Not when you're the first person in 20 years who's made me believe redemption might actually exist. The words hung between them, raw and honest. Riley's hands tightened in his shirt, pulling him closer even as her mind screamed warnings about attachment and vulnerability. You were never untouchable, she whispered, echoing words from hours ago. None of us are. But maybe that's not weakness. Maybe it's what makes us human instead of just monsters wearing skin. Daniel's hands slid from her shoulders to frame her face, thumbs tracing the curve of her cheekbones with reverent gentleness. Then help me figure out how to be human and still save her. Because I can't choose between you and G1. I won't. Riley closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of his touch seep through defenses she'd spent a decade building. When she opened them again, something had shifted. Decision crystallized. Then we don't choose, she said. We change the game entirely. Make Minho think he's won while actually dismantling everything from underneath. But Daniel, it requires you to trust me completely. To let me do what I'm best at without trying to protect me. I trust you. His voice carried absolute certainty. With my life, with G1's life, with everything that matters. Riley's throat tightened. She leaned into his touch, let herself have this one moment of connection before the violence started again. Then here's what we do. She outlined the plan in whispers, their faces close together in the dim light of the command center. Dangerous, audacious, requiring precision timing and luck they didn't deserve, but possible. Barely possible. When she finished, Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then, you realize if any single element goes wrong, we all die. I've survived worse odds. Have you? Riley smiled, small and sad. No, but I've never had someone worth surviving for before. That changes the mathematics. Daniel kissed her then. Not the desperate claiming of earlier, but something softer. A promise wrapped in pressure of lips against lips. A confession that neither had words for yet. Riley kissed him back, tasting coffee and resolve and the particular flavor of someone who'd looked at darkness and chosen to keep walking toward light anyway. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Riley pressed her palm against his chest where his heart hammered against ribs. You fight for her, she said. Now you fight for something real. For family. For the possibility that maybe we get a future that doesn't end in blood. And you? Daniel's hand covered hers, holding it against his heartbeat. What are you fighting for? Riley met his eyes, saw herself reflected there, and spoke truth she'd been avoiding. For the chance to stop running. To stand with someone and face whatever comes instead of facing everything alone. The moment stretched between them, taut with everything unsaid. Then Riley stepped back, professional mask sliding into place. We move in 6 hours, she said. I need to prep equipment. You need to make contact with Minho, confirm the exchange, sell it perfectly. I'm a good liar, Daniel said. I know. Riley moved toward the armory. That's what worries me. That you'll lie to yourself about the risks, convince yourself this plan is safer than it actually is. Riley, promise me something. She turned back, and vulnerability cracked through the operative facade. If it comes down to saving me or saving G1, you choose her. No hesitation, no heroic sacrifices. You get her out and you live, and you don't waste time grieving someone who was already a ghost when you met her. Daniel crossed the space between them in 3 strides, caught her face in his hands again, forced her to hold his gaze. I'm not promising that. I'm not giving you permission to martyr yourself for my peace of mind. We both survive this, or we both go down fighting. That's the only acceptable outcome. That's not tactical. I don't care about tactical. His voice carried steel wrapped in desperation. I care about you, about keeping you alive and safe and by my side when this is over. So no, I won't promise to choose. I'll promise to fight like hell to save everyone, including you. Riley's composure cracked completely. Tears she hadn't allowed herself in years burned behind her eyes. You stupid, stubborn man. You're going to get us all killed with that attitude. Maybe. Daniel's thumb caught a tear that escaped, brushed it away with infinite care. But at least we'll die as people instead of weapons. At least we'll have tried. She pulled him down into another kiss. Fierce and desperate and tasting like goodbye, even as both of them pretended it wasn't. When they finally broke apart, Riley rested her forehead against his chest, felt his arms wrap around her like armor. 6 hours, she whispered. Then we go save your sister and burn down an empire. Together. Daniel confirmed. Together. They stood like that as dawn broke somewhere above the underground safe house. 2 people who'd learned violence as a first language learning to speak tenderness in halting, imperfect syllables. Outside their buried sanctuary, Minho Kang prepared for victory. Paulo Reyes sharpened knives. Wraith positioned pieces for assassination. And somewhere in a converted warehouse, Jiwon cried herself back to sleep, not knowing that people she'd never suspected cared were willing to die for her freedom. The storm was coming. But for 6 hours, Daniel and Riley pretended they couldn't hear the thunder. The armory existed behind 3-inch steel and biometric locks that recognized only Daniel's palm print. Riley stood at the threshold as he opened it, watching fluorescent lights flicker to life over enough weaponry to arm a small military operation. Rifles lined one wall, arranged by caliber and function. Handguns occupied custom racks, each cleaned and maintained with obsessive precision. Body armor hung like strange art installations. And in climate-controlled cases, specialized equipment that spoke to Daniel's particular understanding of violence. Suppressors, thermal optics, breaching charges carefully measured and stored. Your uncle designed this too? Riley asked, running her fingers along a tactical vest. No. Daniel moved to a weapons locker, began pulling specific items. This I built myself after the 3rd attempt on my life. Minho knows about the safe house. Doesn't know about this room. I had it constructed by contractors who died in a car accident 2 days after completion. Riley's head snapped up. You killed them to protect the secret? Car accident was legitimate. Daniel's voice carried weight. But I didn't mourn them as much as I should have. That's the man I was becoming. Someone who saw people as security risks instead of human beings. He set a compact submachine gun on the prep table between them, began field stripping it with practiced efficiency. Riley watched his hands move, noting the scars across his knuckles, the slight tremor he tried to hide. You're afraid, she observed quietly, terrified. Daniel didn't look up. Not of dying, of failing, of watching G1 die because I wasn't good enough or smart enough or ruthless enough, of losing you because I waited too long to say the things that matter. Riley moved beside him, her shoulder brushing his as she selected her own weapons. A handgun she recognized as military issue, knife designed for close quarters, tactical gear that spoke to her shadow training. They worked in synchronized silence, each preparing for violence with the ritual focus of people who'd done this too many times. Tell me about her, Riley said eventually. G1, beyond the tactical facts, who is she? Daniel's hands stilled on the weapon he'd been loading. She's everything I'm not. Gentle. Optimistic. She believes the world is fundamentally good, that people deserve second chances, that art can heal wounds violence creates. He smiled, sad and genuine. She paints, watercolors mostly. Landscapes that make you feel peaceful just looking at them. Complete opposite of the life I've lived. She knows what you do. She knows enough. That I'm not legitimate, that the money funding her education comes from dark places. But she looks at me like I'm still her brother. Like the blood on my hands doesn't change what we mean to each other. Daniel set down the gun, turned to face Riley fully. She's the only person who remembers I used to be human before I became the tiger. Riley heard the longing in his voice. The desperate need to be seen as more than just violence incarnate. She understood it bone deep. That's how you see me, she said quietly. As someone who remembers you're human. Yes. Daniel's hand found hers on the table, calloused fingers threading through hers. And it's how I see you. Not Shadow 7. Not the assassin with 53 kills. Just Riley. Woman who saves people even when it costs everything. Who fights for strangers and cries for children she couldn't protect. Who's brave enough to be vulnerable despite every instinct screaming to hide. The words cracked something open in Riley's chest. She turned toward him, still holding his hand, and found herself caught in his gaze. Dark eyes that had seen too much violence, that carried too much grief, but still held capacity for tenderness. I don't know how to be that person, Riley whispered. How to be soft when everything taught me that softness means death. Then we learned together. Daniel's free hand came up to cup her face, touch feather light. We figure out how to be human and survive simultaneously. How to care about people without destroying them. Riley leaned into his palm, let herself feel the warmth of skin against skin, the simple animal comfort of being touched with gentleness instead of violence. You're not fighting your uncle, she murmured. You're fighting the part of yourself that thinks you deserve to lose. That believes monsters don't get redemption. And you? Daniel's thumb traced her lower lip, drawing her attention to his mouth. What are you fighting? The part of me that wants to run? Riley's voice went husky. The instinct that says attachment is weakness, that caring about you makes me vulnerable, that I should disappear before you see all the broken pieces I'm made of. I already see them. Daniel stepped closer, eliminating the space between them. His body radiated heat, solid and present and real. I see a woman who's survived impossible things and came out the other side still capable of compassion. Who saves people she doesn't know because it's the right thing, not because orders demand it. Who's terrified of being seen and brave enough to stay visible anyway. Their faces were inches apart now. Riley could feel his breath on her lips, could see the pulse hammering in his throat. Every nerve ending screamed warnings about mixing mission with emotion, about lowering defenses before battle. She ignored them all. Show me, she breathed. Daniel's control snapped. He kissed her hard, backing her against the weapons rack with desperate hunger. Riley's arms came up around his neck, fingers tangling in his hair as she pulled him closer. The kiss was nothing like their previous careful explorations. This was raw need, two people drowning in each other, because the alternative was facing how terrified they were of the coming violence. His hands mapped her body with reverent urgency, sliding under her shirt to touch bare skin. Riley gasped against his mouth, arched into his touch. She'd been touched before. Clinically, violently, without emotion. This was different. This was Daniel learning her body like sacred text, finding scars and kissing them, tracing muscle and whispering approval. Riley, he breathed against her neck, voice wrecked. Tell me to stop if. Don't you dare. She caught his face, forced him to meet her eyes. Don't stop. Don't be gentle. I need to feel alive before we walk into that kill box. Need to remember there's more than violence. Something shifted in Daniel's expression. The businessman receded. What remained was raw hunger tempered with tenderness. He lifted her easily, set her on the prep table among the weapons they'd been loading. Riley wrapped her legs around his waist, pulled him between her thighs, felt the hard evidence of his desire pressed against her core. They moved together with the same synchronized precision they showed in combat. His hands found the hem of her shirt, pulled it over her head. She worked his buttons open, pushed the expensive fabric off shoulders she'd watched fight and bleed. Scars mapped both their bodies. His from a lifetime of warfare, hers from training and operations and that one time in Prague she'd barely survived. Beautiful, Daniel murmured, tracing a puckered scar below her collarbone. Every mark, every wound, evidence you survived. Riley's breath hitched. No one had ever looked at her scars as anything but evidence of violence. But Daniel touched them like they were precious, like they proved something worth celebrating. She pulled him down into another kiss, deeper this time, slower, tasting him, learning him, memorizing the particular flavor of his desire mixed with desperation. His hands roamed her body, cupping her breasts through the sports bra she wore, thumbs brushing nipples until she gasped. "Daniel," she managed, "we don't have time for. We have exactly enough time." He kissed down her throat, teeth grazing her pulse point. "For this, for choosing intimacy over fear, for proving we're more than the violence that made us." His fingers found the button of her tactical pants. Riley lifted her hips, helped him strip away the last barriers between them. Cool air hit heated skin, made her shiver. Then Daniel's warmth covered her, skin against skin, heartbeat against heartbeat. They came together with gasping urgency, two people trying to prove they were alive through the most fundamental connection humans possessed. Riley wrapped herself around him, legs, arms, every point of contact anchoring her to this moment, to this man who'd somehow become necessary to her survival. The world narrowed to sensation, the slide of skin, the catch of breath, the building pressure that felt like salvation and damnation simultaneously. Daniel's forehead pressed against hers, their eyes locked as they moved together. No hiding, no pretense, just raw honesty wrapped in desperate need. "Stay with me," Daniel whispered against her lips. "After this, after we save G1 and burn everything down. Stay and let's build something that doesn't require blood." Riley couldn't promise. Couldn't guarantee survival or futures when death waited 6 hours away. So she kissed him instead, poured every unspoken confession into the pressure of her mouth against his, the way her body moved in rhythm with his, the particular quality of her touch that said, "I see you, I choose you. I'm terrified of losing you." They shattered together, pleasure cresting in waves that felt almost like absolution. Daniel caught her cry with his mouth, swallowed her gasps as she shook apart in his arms. Riley felt him follow seconds later, body going rigid, breath stopping, then releasing in a rush that sounded suspiciously like her name. Afterwards, they stayed tangled together on the prep table, surrounded by instruments of death, choosing life in the only way that mattered. Daniel's fingers traced idle patterns on her spine. Riley's head rested against his shoulder, listening to his heartbeat return to normal. "If we die tonight," Daniel said quietly, "I want you to know this mattered. You matter. Not because of what you can do or how many people you've killed, because of who you are underneath all the training and trauma." Riley lifted her head, met his eyes. "We're not dying tonight. Riley, we're not." She touched his face, memorizing the curve of his jaw, the small scar above his eyebrow. "Because I've spent 10 years running from everything that mattered. I'm done running, done hiding. We survive this together, and then we figure out what comes next." Daniel pulled her close, kissed her forehead with heartbreaking tenderness. "Together," he agreed. They dressed in silence, each pulling on tactical gear with practiced efficiency. The intimacy receded, replaced by operational focus, but something fundamental had shifted. They moved around each other with new awareness, touches lingering just slightly longer than necessary, eyes meeting with shared understanding. Riley checked her weapons one final time. Handgun loaded and chambered, knife secured against her thigh, backup magazines distributed for easy access. She caught her reflection in the polished metal of a gun cabinet and barely recognized herself. Same face, same scars, but something in her eyes had changed. She looked alive in ways she hadn't for years. Daniel stood beside her, his own preparation complete. Dark tactical gear replaced the expensive suits, making him look more soldier than businessman. He caught her gaze in the reflection. "Ready?" he asked. Riley turned to face him fully, reached out and adjusted his vest, tightening a strap, her fingers lingering on the Kevlar that might keep him alive. "For saving your sister? Yes. For whatever comes after? I have no idea." "That's honest, at least." Daniel caught her hand, pressed a kiss to her scarred knuckles. "Let's go finish this. Together." "Together," Riley echoed. They gathered their equipment and ascended from the armory. Outside, Los Angeles was waking to another beautiful day. Sunshine and traffic, and people who'd never know that violence was being planned in the shadows. Daniel made the call to Minho, voice carrying just the right mix of resignation and desperation. Pier 17, midnight. I'll bring Riley Clayton, and you release G1 unharmed. Minho's laugh crackled through the speaker. Of course, nephew. Family first always. I'll see you tonight. Both of you. The line went dead. Riley checked her watch. 11 hours until midnight. 11 hours to finalize preparation, position backup resources, pray that their desperate plan had even a chance of succeeding. She looked at Daniel, saw her own fear reflected in his dark eyes. But underneath the fear, something stronger: determination, purpose. The particular quality of people who decided that some things were worth dying for. We finish this together, she said again, making it promise and prayer simultaneously. Daniel's hand found hers, squeezed once. Or we don't finish at all. They stood in the safe house doorway, on the threshold between safety and slaughter, holding each other's hands like anchors against the storm. Somewhere across the city, Minho was preparing his trap. Wraith was sharpening knives. Paulo Reyes was dreaming of revenge. Let them come. Riley was done running, done hiding. Tonight, Shadow 7 emerged one last time. Not as government weapon, but as a woman fighting for something that finally mattered. For family. For the man beside her. For the impossible hope that monsters could learn to love without destroying everything they touched. The war was coming. But this time, Riley Clayton walked toward it with purpose instead of programming, with choice instead of orders. And that made all the difference. Midnight came dressed in rain and gunpowder. Pier 17 sprawled across the waterfront like a skeleton of commerce long dead, converted warehouses casting geometric shadows across oil-slicked pavement. Riley moved through darkness with the particular grace of someone who'd learned to become absence itself. No sound, no presence. Just the ghost of movement between shipping containers stacked like steel monuments to greed. The water had been cold enough to steal breath, currents vicious enough to drown. But Riley had trained in worse conditions, learned to make her body comply with impossible demands. She'd surfaced beneath the pier structure 20 minutes ago, climbed through rotting support beams, bypassed motion sensors with equipment Daniel had provided, and now positioned herself in shadows overlooking the killing floor Minho had so carefully prepared. 30 gunmen, maybe more, positioned with military precision across elevated catwalks and behind container coverage. All eyes focused inward on the center space where Minho stood beside G1, the girl bound to a chair, face streaked with tears that caught ambient light like accusations. Paulo Reyes leaned against a container to Minho's right, favoring his injured side, gun held with casual readiness. And standing slightly apart, watching everything with the particular stillness of apex predators, was a man Riley hadn't seen in 10 years but would recognize anywhere. Wraith, her former partner. The ghost who'd taught her half of everything she knew and tried to kill her for refusing to murder a child. He looked older, harder, eyes carrying the flat affect of someone who'd stopped pretending to be human years ago. When he smiled, Riley's blood turned to ice water. He knew she was here, had been waiting. This entire setup was as much trap for her as execution for Daniel. Her comm-piece crackled with Daniel's voice, barely audible. In position. 2 minutes. Riley's finger tapped twice against her rifle trigger guard. Received. She'd argued against him coming at all, wanted him safe and far away while she handled extraction alone. But Daniel had been immovable as granite. They finished this together or not at all. So now he approached from the main entrance in his Aston Martin, playing the broken billionaire delivering his assassin lover to save his sister. The car's headlights cut through rain, illuminating the warehouse entrance. Daniel emerged, hands raised, wearing an expensive suit soaked through. He looked defeated, desperate, exactly what Minho wanted to see. "Uncle," Daniel called out, voice carrying across the space. "I've come as promised, unarmed, alone. Let G1 go and you can have everything." Minho's laugh echoed off concrete and steel. "Everything? Nephew, I already have everything. Your empire crumbles as we speak. Your allies abandon you. Your reputation lies in ruins. All that remains is teaching you the final lesson about power, that it makes you paranoid and cruel." Daniel walked forward slowly, measured steps taking him deeper into the kill box. "That it destroys everyone you claim to love? That lesson I learned watching you, Uncle. Watching you sacrifice family for revenge disguised as legacy. Brave words from a man about to die. Minho gestured, and gunmen stepped from shadows, weapons trained on Daniel from a dozen angles. Where's your weapon? Your ghost? Your Riley Clayton who fights so well? Here, Riley said, voice carrying from her elevated position. She stepped into view, rifle raised, sight picture perfect on Minho's center mass. Wondering when you'd ask, chaos erupted with the particular violence of storms breaking. Riley's first shot took out the nearest gunman before his brain registered her presence. She was moving immediately, flowing across the catwalk with liquid grace, dropping targets with surgical precision. Each shot found flesh, each movement calculated 3 steps ahead. Below, Daniel had dropped flat the moment gunfire started, rolled behind a container, came up with weapons that had been hidden in the car. Not unarmed at all, never unarmed. He moved through the warehouse like the tiger of Busan he'd always been, all pretense of civilization stripped away, leaving only the predator underneath. 2 men rushed his position. Daniel caught the first with a brutal strike to the throat, used the man's momentum to throw him into his partner. Both went down. Daniel's gun spoke twice, and neither rose again. Riley provided covering fire from above, picking off anyone who tried to flank Daniel's position. They moved like symphony, each anticipating the other's needs, creating overlapping fields of fire that turned Minho's carefully planned ambush into a slaughterhouse working in reverse. Enough! Minho's voice cut through the gunfire. He stood with detonator held high, thumb on the trigger. One more shot and I blow this entire pier to hell. With your sister still attached. Everyone froze. Riley's rifle sight found Minho's head, finger pressure on trigger just short of firing. Below, Daniel stood with weapon trained on Paulo Reyes, breathing hard, blood splattered across his expensive suit. Standoff, Minho said, almost conversational. How tiresome. Wraith, would you mind? The attack came from Riley's blind side. Wraith had positioned himself perfectly, waiting for this exact moment. His knife found the gap in her vest, slid between ribs with professional precision. Not fatal, not immediately, but enough to drop her. Riley gasped, rifle clattering away, hand instinctively pressing against the wound. Blood spread warm and fast across her side. She'd been stabbed before, knew this particular quality of pain, the way consciousness wanted to flee and training forced it to stay. Hello, Seven, Wraith whispered against her ear, knife still buried in her flesh. Been a long time since Jakarta. Did you think about that little girl? Wonder if she'd have grown up to be anything special if you'd just followed orders. Rage burned through pain. Riley's elbow shot backward, caught Wraith in the solar plexus. He grunted, grip loosening just enough. She twisted, ripped the knife from her own side with a scream that tasted like copper, and drove it into Wraith's thigh with vicious precision. Femoral artery. He had maybe 3 minutes before blood loss killed him. Wraith's eyes went wide with understanding. He stumbled backward, hand pressed against the spurting wound, face draining of color. You always were better at close quarters, he managed. That's why they wanted you dead. Too good, too dangerous even to us. Should have stayed buried, Riley hissed, using the catwalk railing to stay upright. Blood loss made her vision swim, but training kept her focused. Below, Daniel was moving, using the distraction to close distance with Minho. Daniel, no! Riley tried to shout, but pain stole her breath. Paulo Reyes saw him coming, swung his weapon around. For one frozen moment, Riley watched futures collapse. Saw Daniel die. Saw everything they'd survived mean nothing. Saw Minho win through his nephew's desperation. Then Daniel twisted left, movement too fast for injured Reyes to track. His gun came up, spoke twice in rapid succession. Both rounds found home in Paulo's chest. The cartel boss looked surprised, almost offended, then collapsed backward into containers that rang like funeral bells. You can't kill what made you, Paulo had said once. Daniel had proved him wrong. But Minho still held the detonator, still had G1. And now his face carried the particular rage of someone watching their careful plans disintegrate. Everyone dies, Minho announced, thumb moving toward the trigger. Riley's world narrowed to scope picture, to breath control, to the space between heartbeats where impossible shots became inevitable. 175 yards. Angled shot. Moving target. Injury compromising stability. She fired. The bullet caught Minho in the right eye socket, snapping his head back with vicious finality. The detonator clattered from nerveless fingers, hit concrete without triggering. Minho's body followed, collapsing like a puppet with cut strings. Silence crashed down like waves after storm. Riley sagged against the railing, rifle slipping from numb fingers. Below, Daniel was already moving, racing toward G1, cutting through her bonds with shaking hands. The girl collapsed into his arms, sobbing, alive, safe. "Riley!" Daniel's voice carried terror she'd never heard from him. He saw her swaying on the catwalk, saw blood spreading across her tactical vest. Hold on. But gravity had other plans. Riley's legs gave out. She pitched forward, felt herself falling, and distantly thought this was fitting. Shadow 7 dying in shadows, finally getting the ending she'd earned years ago in Jakarta when she'd chosen conscience over orders. Strong arms caught her before she hit concrete. Daniel had somehow crossed the distance impossibly fast, was cradling her against his chest, face stark with fear. "Don't you dare," he said, voice breaking. "Don't you dare die on me now, not after everything." Riley tried to smile, tasted blood. "Did we get her? She's safe. You saved her. You saved all of us." Daniel's hands pressed against her wound, trying to stem bleeding that wouldn't stop. "Just stay with me, please. Stay." "Always. So demanding," Riley managed. Her vision was graying at the edges, consciousness slipping like water through fingers. "Daniel, tell G1. She should keep painting. World needs more beauty." "Tell her yourself," Daniel insisted. He was carrying her now, running toward the car, shouting instructions into his phone for medical extraction. "You're going to survive this. We're going to have that future we talked about, the one without blood, the one where we get to be human." Riley wanted to believe him, wanted to imagine mornings and coffee and something resembling peace, but darkness was so close now, so tempting. "Love you," she whispered, barely audible. "In case we don't get to say it proper." Daniel's tears hit her face like rain. "I love you too, so you have to live. Have to give me chance to say it back properly, to prove it every day. Riley, please." But darkness had patience. It waited. And finally, mercifully, it claimed her. Dawn broke bloody and beautiful over Los Angeles harbor. Daniel sat in the back of an ambulance, Riley's blood drying brown on his hands, watching EMTs work with professional efficiency. They'd stabilized her vitals, stopped the worst of the bleeding, pumped her full of fluids and antibiotics. Now she lay unconscious on a gurney, face pale as death, breathing shallow but steady. "She'll make it," the lead paramedic said, noting Daniel's expression. "Knife missed major organs by centimeters. Lucky woman." Lucky. Daniel wanted to laugh. Nothing about Riley's life had been lucky. She'd been forged in darkness, trained to kill, sent on missions that destroyed her soul piece by piece. The fact that she'd survived this long wasn't luck. It was sheer stubborn refusal to let the universe claim her before she'd found something worth surviving for. G1 sat beside him, wrapped in shock blankets, face empty with trauma. She hadn't spoken since Daniel had cut her free, just held his hand with crushing grip like he might disappear if she let go. "Is she going to die?" G1 finally whispered. "The woman who saved us?" "No." Daniel's voice carried certainty he didn't feel. "She's too stubborn to die, and I won't let her." "You love her?" Not a question. G1 had always been perceptive, had always seen through his masks to truths underneath. "Yes." No point in denying what his face already confessed. "I love her. Probably have since the moment she threw that tray and rewrote my entire understanding of fate." "That's insane," G1 said. "You barely know her." "I know enough. I know she's survived impossible things and came out still believing in saving people. I know she chose humanity over orders, conscience over programming. I know when I look at her, I see the future I want instead of just more violence." Daniel's voice cracked. "I know I can't lose her now that I've found her." G1 leaned against his shoulder, her presence grounding. "Then fight for her, the way she fought for me." The ambulance pulled away, sirens wailing, carrying Riley toward whatever future waited. Daniel and Ji-won followed in a police escort, both covered in blood that wasn't theirs. Both processing trauma too fresh to fully comprehend. At the hospital, surgeons worked for 3 hours. Daniel paced the surgical waiting room, unable to sit, unable to breathe properly until someone told him Riley would live. Ji-won dozed in uncomfortable chairs, exhaustion finally claiming her. When the surgeon finally emerged, Daniel nearly collapsed with relief. She's stable. The knife missed the lung by millimeters, nicked the liver, but we've repaired the damage. She'll need extensive recovery, but barring complications, she should make a full physical recovery. And mentally? Daniel asked, knowing that wounds went deeper than flesh. The surgeon's expression softened. That depends on factors beyond medicine. Support systems, therapy, time. But she's a fighter. You can see it in how her body responded to trauma. She's survived worse. Daniel was allowed into recovery 15 minutes later. Riley lay unconscious, face peaceful in sleep, monitors beeping steady rhythm. He pulled a chair beside her bed, took her hand carefully to avoid the IV lines, and simply breathed with her. In. Out. Proof they'd both survived another impossible day. Hours passed. Nurses came and went. Ji-won joined him eventually, curling up in the corner chair, watching this woman who'd saved her life with something like awe. Riley woke at sunset, golden light streaming through windows, painting everything amber and forgiving. "Daniel," she rasped, voice ruined from intubation. "Here." He leaned forward, squeezed her hand. "Right here. You're safe. Won's safe. Everyone's safe." Riley's eyes found his, clear despite medication. "Min-ho? Dead. 1 shot, 1 kill. You magnificent, terrifying woman." Daniel's voice carried pride and fear mixed. 175 yards while bleeding out. They're going to teach that shot in sniper schools. Wraith? Died on the catwalk. Femoral artery, just like you intended. Very poetic justice. Daniel's thumb traced circles on her palm. "It's over, Riley. The war, the hunting, all of it. Over." Tears leaked from Riley's eyes, tracking into her hairline. "I killed him. My old partner. The man who trained me." "You survived him," Daniel corrected gently. "There's a difference. He made his choices. You made yours. You chose to save people instead of destroy them. That's everything." Riley turned her head toward where Ji-won slept, studying the girl she'd risked everything to save. "She okay?" "Traumatized but alive. Thanks to you. She wants to thank you properly when you're stronger." "I don't need thanks. Just tell her she should keep painting. World needs more beauty than blood. You can tell her yourself." Daniel lifted Riley's hand to his lips, kissed her scarred knuckles with reverent tenderness. "You're not disappearing this time. No running, no hiding. You're staying. And we're figuring out what comes next together. Daniel, I'm a wanted woman. My agency. Taken care of." Daniel's voice carried satisfaction. "While you were in surgery, I made some calls. Sent evidence to very specific people about shadow programs, illegal operations, sanctioned murders. Your agency is about to face congressional investigations that will dismantle them completely. You're not wanted anymore. You're free." Riley stared at him, processing. "You burned my entire organization to keep me safe?" Without hesitation. "They made you a weapon, then tried to destroy you when your conscience inconvenienced them. They don't get to keep hunting you." Daniel's expression hardened. "No one hunts you anymore. You're under my protection now, and I'm very good at protecting what matters." "You shouldn't have needed me," Riley whispered, echoing fears from days ago. "You should hate me for bringing this chaos into your life. Then why does it feel like I've known you forever?" Daniel leaned closer, forehead nearly touching hers. "Why does loving you feel like the first real thing I've done in 20 years? Riley's breath caught. You just said, 'I love you.'" Daniel spoke each word deliberately, making them promise and vow. "I love your strength and your scars and the way you fight for strangers. I love how you chose humanity when it would have been easier to stay a weapon. I love that you made me remember what it means to be human instead of just monster wearing skin." "This is a mistake," Riley tried, voice weak. "No." Daniel closed the final distance, kissed her with infinite gentleness, mindful of her injuries, mindful of how fragile survival could be. This is the first thing that feels real. The first choice I've made for love, instead of power or revenge or legacy. Riley kissed him back, tasting tears and antiseptic, and the particular flavor of promises too dangerous to speak but necessary to make. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, she saw her own desperate hope reflected in his dark eyes. "I don't know how to be anything but a weapon," she confessed. "Then we learned together." Daniel's hand cradled her face, thumb brushing away tears. "We build something that doesn't require blood, something peaceful and normal and boring. We figure out who we are when we're not fighting for our lives." "That sounds terrifying." "It does, but I'd rather face that terror with you than face anything else alone." Daniel smiled, sad and genuine and real. "Stay, Riley, please. Build this impossible future with me." Riley looked past him to where Ji-won slept, to the sunset painting everything gold, to the monitors proving her heart still beat. She'd spent 10 years running from everything that mattered, convinced attachment meant death. But maybe she'd been wrong. Maybe connection was what made survival worthwhile. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll stay. We'll figure this out together." Daniel's relieved exhale felt like absolution. He kissed her again, softer this time, less desperate and more promise. Riley let herself sink into it, let herself believe that maybe monsters could learn to love without destroying everything. Outside, Los Angeles continued its chaos, indifferent to private resurrections happening in hospital rooms. But for two people who'd survived impossible things, the future finally looked like more than just violence waiting to happen. It looked like a choice. And for the first time in either of their lives, they chose each other. 1 week later, Vancouver rain-painted windows in the safe house Daniel had secured under names that didn't exist in any database. Riley sat at the kitchen table, laptop open, watching news reports that felt like watching someone else's life. Los Angeles had erupted in scandal. Federal investigations into shadow programs, congressional hearings about illegal assassinations, agencies crumbling under whistleblower testimony that Daniel had orchestrated with surgical precision. Her face never appeared. Her name never surfaced. Daniel had been thorough, redirecting attention to bureaucrats and handlers, while keeping Riley herself buried under layers of protection that even her former employers couldn't penetrate. "You're safe," he'd promised. And somehow, impossibly, he'd made it true. The burner phone on the table buzzed, encrypted message appearing on screen in terse government speak. "Shadow 7, contract status terminated. All kill orders rescinded. Congratulations on your retirement. Consider this professional courtesy for services rendered." Riley stared at the message for long minutes, waiting for the trap, the catch, the inevitable betrayal. But nothing came. Just freedom. The kind she'd stopped believing existed. "Riley?" Daniel emerged from the bedroom, hair wet from shower, wearing casual clothes that made him look younger, more human, less like the tiger of Busan, and more like someone who might actually deserve peace. She turned the phone toward him, showed the message. "They're letting me go." Daniel read it, expression careful. "How do you feel?" "Terrified." Riley's voice cracked. "I've been running for 10 years. Being hunted gave me purpose, kept me moving. Without that," she gestured vaguely. "Who am I if I'm not running?" "You're Riley." Daniel sat across from her, took her hands in his. "Woman who saves people even when it costs everything. Who chose conscience over programming. Who fought beside me and made me remember there's more to life than empire and revenge." "That's who you see," Riley said quietly. "I'm not sure that's who I am. Violence was how I knew I was alive, how I proved I existed. Without it, maybe peace is how we prove we deserve to be." Daniel's thumb traced her scarred knuckles. "Maybe learning to live without violence is the hardest mission either of us will ever face." Riley looked at their joined hands, struck by how natural contact had become. A week ago, she'd flinched from casual touch, seen every human connection as potential vulnerability. Now Daniel's presence felt necessary, grounding, like gravity keeping her from floating into void. "Ji-won wants to visit," Daniel said, changing subject carefully. "She's been asking about you every day, wants to thank you properly for saving her life. She doesn't owe me gratitude." "Maybe not," But she wants to offer it anyway. Let her. Let people care about you, Riley. It's not weakness, it's connection. The words settled over her like warm blankets. Connection. She'd spent so long afraid of it, convinced attachment meant losing control, that she'd forgotten connection was what made survival worthwhile. Okay, Riley said finally. She can visit. But Daniel, I don't know how to be normal. How to make small talk and pretend I haven't killed people. How to be someone she'd want to know. She already wants to know you. Not the assassin. Just you. Woman who threw herself into danger to save a stranger. Who took a knife wound and still made impossible shot to keep her safe. That person is worth knowing. Riley's throat tightened. You make it sound heroic, like I'm something other than weapon learning to rust. You're not rusting. You're healing. Daniel stood, pulled her gently to her feet, wrapped arms around her with infinite care, mindful of healing ribs. And healing is the bravest thing survivors do. Riley let herself be held, buried her face in his shoulder, breathed in the scent of him, soap, and something uniquely Daniel, that calmed the constant vigilance humming in her blood. I love you, she whispered against his shirt. I know it's fast and probably insane, but I love you, and that terrifies me more than any operation ever did. Good, Daniel murmured into her hair. Terror means you're alive, means you care enough to be afraid of loss. That's everything. They stood like that as rain drummed against windows. Two people learning to be human again in increments measured in heartbeats and quiet confessions. Later, Ji-won arrived carrying a portfolio she handled like sacred text. She looked healthier than Riley remembered, color back in her face, eyes carrying determination instead of just trauma. I wanted to show you something, Ji-won said, setting the portfolio on the table. She opened it carefully, revealed watercolors that stole Riley's breath. Landscapes painted in colors that shouldn't exist in nature but felt truer than reality. Gardens blooming with impossible flowers. Coastlines where water met sky in gradients that spoke of peace beyond vocabulary. Each painting carried hope like a language Riley had forgotten how to speak. They're beautiful, Riley managed. They're healing, Ji-won corrected. After everything that happened, painting was the only thing that helped. Creating beauty instead of drowning in violence. She met Riley's eyes, brave and unflinching. You saved my life. These are my way of saying thank you. Proof that your violence created space for beauty to exist. The gift hit Riley like physical impact. All those years convinced her existence brought only death and destruction, and here was evidence that maybe, her choices had mattered. That saving one life could ripple into creations that made the world slightly less dark. I don't know what to say, Riley whispered. Say you'll keep them. Hang them somewhere you'll see them every day. Remember that you're more than what was done to you, more than what you've done. You're someone who saves people, creates space for art and hope and futures. Ji-won smiled, genuine and warm. You're someone worth knowing. Riley's careful composure shattered. Tears came hot and fast. Years of suppression breaking like dams after flood. Daniel's arms wrapped around her from behind, anchoring her through the storm. Ji-won joined the embrace, and for one perfect moment, Riley felt something she'd thought impossible. Family. Not blood, not obligation, but chosen connection. People who saw her completely. Scars and kills and broken pieces. And decided she was worth loving anyway. Thank you, Riley managed eventually. For seeing me. For making me believe I deserve to exist as more than weapon. You always deserved it, Ji-won said firmly. You just needed to survive long enough to believe it. The afternoon passed in gentle conversation, learning each other beyond crisis and adrenaline. Ji-won talked about her art, her dreams of opening a gallery that showcased trauma survivors' work. Daniel spoke carefully about dismantling his criminal empire, transitioning legitimate holdings to Ji-won's management, while he figured out who he was without power and violence defining him. And Riley listened, contributing quiet observations, learning how to be present in peacetime, learning that maybe she could be more than Shadow 7, more than Ghost, more than Weapon. Maybe she could just be Riley. And maybe that was enough. That night, after Ji-won left, Daniel found Riley standing at the window watching Vancouver lights blur through rain. What are you thinking? He asked, arms sliding around her waist. That a week ago I would have run by now. would have seen all this connection as liability and disappeared before anyone could use it against me. Riley leaned back into his warmth. But I'm still here, still choosing to stay. I'm glad, Daniel said simply. Selfishly, impossibly glad. Me too. Riley turned in his arms, looked up at the man who'd somehow become her anchor. I don't know what our future looks like. Don't know how to build normal when we're both so fundamentally damaged. But I want to try. Want to figure it out with you. Then we will. Daniel kissed her, slow and deep and tasting like promises. Together, however long it takes. Outside, the world continued its chaos. But in that Vancouver safe house, 2 predators found peace and called it love. 3 months later, coastal California welcomed morning with the particular silence that came before the world woke. Riley moved through training forms in the yard, body flowing through patterns that were half combat, half meditation. The knife wound had healed to angry scar tissue, one more mark among many. Her ribs no longer protested deep breathing. Physical recovery complete, even if psychological healing remained ongoing work. She'd found a therapist who specialized in military trauma, someone who understood violence without requiring explanation. Twice weekly sessions where Riley learned to process decade-old guilt, to forgive herself for surviving when others hadn't, to accept that being weapon didn't mean she couldn't also be human. Progress measured in millimeters, but progress nonetheless. Coffee? Daniel's voice carried from the deck. He stood in morning light holding 2 mugs, wearing jeans and a t-shirt that would have been unthinkable 3 months ago. The tiger had shed his suit, become someone softer at the edges. Riley completed her form, joined him on the deck. Their house sat isolated on coastal cliffs, small and deliberately unremarkable. Nothing like Daniel's previous penthouse luxury, but more home than anywhere Riley had lived in years. Jiwon's coming for dinner, Daniel said, handing her the mug. She's bringing her new girlfriend. Wants our approval, apparently. Riley smiled, genuine and unguarded in ways that still surprised her. She doesn't need our approval. I know, but she wants it anyway. Family. Daniel said the word like he was still learning what it meant. They sat in comfortable silence, drinking coffee, watching waves hammer cliffs below. Somewhere in the house, Daniel's laptop pinged with financial updates. He'd dismantled most of the criminal empire, transferred legitimate businesses to Jiwon's management, kept only enough resources to ensure comfortable survival. Any regrets? Riley asked. About walking away from all that power? Daniel considered carefully. I don't miss the empire. Don't miss the constant paranoia or the violence or knowing everyone wanted something from me. But I'd be lying if I said adjustment was easy. 20 years building something, then watching it crumble because you chose conscience over legacy. That's growth, Riley said. Painful but necessary. What about you? Miss the adrenaline? The missions? Sometimes. Riley's honesty came easier now. I dream about Jakarta still. The little girl I couldn't save. Wake up convinced I'm back in that room facing impossible choices. But then I remember I chose differently when it mattered. Save G1. Chose humanity over programming. That has to count for something. It counts for everything. Daniel's hand found hers, squeezed once. You proved that broken people can heal, that monsters can learn to love without destroying everything. Riley leaned into his shoulder, comfortable with contact that once would have felt like vulnerability. We're building something, aren't we? Something that doesn't require blood to sustain it. We're trying. Some days better than others. But yes, we're building it together. The moment stretched, peaceful and ordinary and precious, specifically because it was ordinary. No gunfire, no betrayal, no violence lurking behind every corner. Just 2 people learning to exist in aftermath, figuring out who they were when survival wasn't the only goal. Riley's phone buzzed. Text from Jiwon. Bringing dessert. Hope you're ready for interrogation about relationship status and future plans. Consider yourself warned. Daniel read over her shoulder, laughed. She's relentless. She's happy. Wants us to be happy too. Riley typed back. Bring wine. Lots of wine. We'll need it for this conversation. They spent the afternoon preparing dinner. Simple cooking that felt revolutionary after years of meal replacement bars and whatever food could be consumed while planning operations. Daniel chopped vegetables with the same precision he'd once applied to strategy. Riley monitored sauce with focus she'd once reserved for eliminating targets. Domestic, normal, boring in the best possible way. Ji-won arrived at sunset with her girlfriend Maya, a graphic designer with kind eyes and easy laugh. They brought wine and stories and the particular warmth of people genuinely happy to exist in same space. Over dinner, conversation flowed naturally. Art gallery plans, upcoming exhibitions, Maya's freelance projects, normal topics that didn't involve violence or survival or trauma. Riley contributed where comfortable, still learning how to engage without suspicion. "So," Ji-won said eventually, wine making her bold. "When's the wedding?" Riley choked on her drink. Daniel's hand found her thigh under the table, steadying. "Wedding?" Daniel asked carefully. "You two are basically married already. Living together, finishing each other's sentences, that whole surviving impossible violence bonding thing." Ji-won gestured with her wine glass. "Might as well make it official." "Marriage requires planning," Riley said. "Paperwork. Legal identity that actually exists. Details." Ji-won waved dismissively. "Daniel's good at making details work. Question is whether you want to." Riley looked at Daniel, saw her own uncertainty reflected. They'd survived blood and bullets, but hadn't discussed futures beyond vague, figuring it out together. Marriage felt impossibly permanent for two people, still learning how to be human. "It's okay to want normal things," Maya said gently, reading the room. "Just because your past was complicated doesn't mean your future has to be." The words settled like benediction. Permission neither Riley nor Daniel had known they needed. Later, after Ji-won and Maya left, Daniel and Riley stood on the deck watching stars emerge. The question hung unspoken between them, heavy with possibility. "I don't need marriage to know this is real," Daniel said finally. "Don't need ceremony or paperwork to prove you matter." "But," Riley heard the unfinished thought, "but I want it anyway. Want to stand in front of people we care about and choose you publicly. Prove we're more than violence bonding, more than trauma survivors clinging together. We're people who love each other, who chose each other." Daniel turned to face her fully. "Riley Clayton, or whatever your real name is, will you marry me? Build this impossible peaceful future together officially?" Riley's throat tightened. A year ago, the question would have sent her running. 6 months ago, she'd have laughed at impossibility. Now, standing on cliffs overlooking ocean that had witnessed their resurrection, the answer felt inevitable. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you. Figure out normal together. Build something that doesn't require blood." Daniel pulled her close, kissed her with reverent joy. Riley kissed back, tasting salt air and wine and the particular flavor of promises worth keeping. "I didn't save you for what you did," Daniel murmured against her lips. "I saved you for who you are. Woman who chose conscience over programming, who fights for strangers, who's brave enough to build peace after surviving war. Then maybe monsters can learn to love after all," Riley said, echoing words from months ago. "Not monsters." Daniel's hand cradled her face. "Just people. Complicated, damaged, trying our best people, and that's enough." They stood wrapped in each other as night deepened, two predators who'd found peace and called it love. The city still whispered their names sometimes, half myth, half warning. Stories about the tiger and the ghost, the Mafia boss and assassin who'd burned empires for each other. But in this moment, on this cliff, they were just Daniel and Riley. Two people learning that redemption looked like ordinary mornings and difficult conversations, and choosing each other daily instead of just surviving together. The future stretched uncertain and beautiful, painted in colors they were only beginning to learn. But for the first time in either of their lives, uncertainty felt like possibility instead of threat. And that made all the difference. Thank you for watching. If this chapter hit you, the danger, the trust, the spark between Daniel and Riley, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.